What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Gators Online Show. It is going to be packed with information and intel and analysis on today's episode. And as always, I'm Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online, and I'm joined by Zach Albaverdi, senior writer with Gators Online. And again, we've got a lot to talk about today.
It's a good thing we waited till Friday, huh, Keith?
Well, yeah. A lot going on. It's been a busy week at Gators Online. The subs on our site are thrilled, by the way, because there's been just an overload of information, not just breaking news, but intel, scoop, analysis, all that stuff. And we're going to get into that, of course. But before we do, we've got to pay a quick bill. So, Zach, take it away.
Absolutely. Well, as we do each and every week, want to encourage all Florida fans out there to go check out Big Game Football Factory, which are the producers of the ball that you saw the Gators using in the orange and blue game that they've used throughout the spring and that they will be using in the fall. And you can get your hands on the official game ball for the Florida Gators. If you head over to biggameusa.com, use the code Gators Online, you'll get 10% off your entire order and free shipping. The Gators designed this ball with Big Game USA to ensure they're comfortable with it, and it's truly one of a kind. Start your collection of Florida's official game balls today at biggameusa.com/Gators.
All right. So one of the big things that we have going on today on as we record this morning, Friday, I need to point out, you may be listening to it Friday, you may be listening Saturday, is that Florida and safety Gregory Smith, who Zach was primed to play a lot of snaps this year.
Yep.
They have parted ways, and the details we have of that, I'll give a few of the details, then Zach, you can kind of tell us what it means. I think that's probably the best way to do this. He announced last week or revealed last week that he planned to enter the portal. He just completed his true freshman season, was redshirted, but actually did play a significant amount of snaps and showed some promise. And in the spring, he was actually participating a lot. And I'll let Zach get into the details there. But again, announced his plans last week to enter the portal, but Florida wanted to keep him and met with him and talked to him. And from what we're told, he had told them a few times, hey, I'm probably staying, but he had a deadline of 4 p.m. Thursday to sign all his NIL contract stuff that Florida does. And Zach, you wrote a great story just in the past week that 98% of the team was locked into these contracts. They'd already signed them. Well, he was one of the 2% that was. Well, that 4 p.m. deadline Thursday came and went. He did not sign, and Florida and Gregory Smith have parted ways. And so he is not going to, unless something dramatic changes, he is not going to be a Florida Gator moving forward. Yeah. Zach, what does this mean for the roster?
Well, first of all, I want to give you credit, Keith, because you were all over the story and we're kind of, one of the first people to let the Gator Nation know that, hey, this thing is not over with. And I think Florida did all that it could to keep Greg in the fold. And like you mentioned, he was a very important piece in that safety room. The Gators were obviously limited in the spring with injuries in the secondary, one of them being Bryce Thornton, their starting strong safety. He was out or, non-contact when he did play for all of spring camp, which meant that Greg Smith was working as the starting strong safety all throughout the spring. He was getting those reps with the first team defense. He was building on what he got to do towards the tail end of 2024, when really the majority of the playing time that he received happened at the end of the season. And he got 5 games in, even though he redshirted with 4 because he got to play in the bowl game. That was when he received the most snaps of the season. And they definitely liked Greg Smith. They liked him as a prospect. They liked his potential in college, and they wanted to keep him in the fold. They definitely did everything that they could on their end. And at the end of the day, he's deciding to move on. I think that Florida – I don't know if Greg would have started this season, but I do think that he would have played starting reps. I think he would have gotten opportunities to be on the field with the ones throughout the season. And now his departure, Keith, probably forces them to go and look in the secondary. It was a spot that they tried to add players in during the first winter window. They were able to get somebody at cornerback and Michael Caraway Jr., but they got a commitment from Maddox. He ended up backing off that. They offered and tried to get several other DBs on campus, and it didn't happen. I do think and felt that the progress that Drake Stubbs and Lagonza Hayward, although he was playing star, the promise that they showed in the spring, coupled with Greg Smith getting reps with the ones. Obviously, you got Castell and Thornton back. I thought it kind of created a situation where they might not need to go out and get a safety in the spring had everything stayed the way it was. But I think with Smith leaving, Keith, that's probably going to force them to now consider some options at safety.
Yeah, and one of the guys that we can confirm from this player's camp that they're communicating with, that Florida's communicating with, again, we're getting this from the side of the player, I need to point out, is a young man named Saquon Patterson, who is from the Fort Lauderdale area and just completed his true freshman season with Miami and played a lot of snaps, got a lot of experience. And the people in his camp say that he's communicating with Florida. We have more about that at GatorsOnline.com, a lot more details, but do not be surprised if he visits the Florida Gators within the next few days, next 3 to 5 days. Now, one thing I can tell you is that in his conversations with Florida, again, this is coming from his side, Florida has said they're looking for a veteran with snaps, because Gregory Smith's not a veteran, but he did have snaps. In other words, they don't want to bring in somebody that doesn't have any experience at all. Sure. They need some experience. So something to watch there. And Zach, you wrote a story just a few days ago. Hey, it's spring portal window season, and you wrote a story about Florida's needs, and you touched on this. And now we think that they obviously probably need somebody at safety. But what are some of the other areas at which that you think Florida? Don't be surprised, if you see Florida going after some guys at these positions.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I think it's important to point out for especially the fans out there that love this transfer portal coverage and the things that Florida is able to do with its roster and the things that they've been able to do in the past. You're just not going to see as much of it this spring. I think that the pieces that they do add and the guys that they do target, they need to make sure that they hit on them because they could potentially be the difference in the depth and what Florida's able to do on defense. But that's really, to me, where their most important needs still remain. I think it's important to point out, though, that they right now at this time, it looks like they're at either 85 or 86 scholarships with Aiden Warner, who we'll talk about in a little bit, getting awarded a Scally. I don't know if that means Clay Millen comes off his scholarship. I don't know if that means somebody else because they were at 85 based on our count before the news of Aiden Warner, and after we weren't counting Smith in that 85. So they don't have a lot of spots. I guess that's what I'm trying to say here. That being said, obviously with Smith leaving, maybe there's a chance for some attrition still, or maybe they can shuffle some things up with their scholarship roster. But I think that if they go at anybody other than in the secondary, which I think obviously now we see as a need, and they're communicating with the Miami transfer, I think it's got to be defensive line. Talking with some sources and just kind of seeing the way that they maneuvered in the portal the first time around, it's clear that they would like to add an experienced nose tackle just to give them some more depth at that position after losing Cam Jackson and Desmond Watson. Now, the positive is that Mekhi Barrow, who plays nose tackle for the Gators, had a really strong spring based on what we've heard and then just based on the results. I mean, they named him the defensive lineman of basically the MVP of his position at the end of the spring. And then also it's encouraging to see Jamari Lyons back on the field, going through reps. Doesn't look like he's lost a step coming off of that season-ending injury. So I think those two developments are encouraging, but nonetheless, they still need to get another body there if they can. And Keith, it looks like they're potentially going after another Miami transfer there.
Yeah, a guy named Josh Horton. This is interesting. Look, what we need to tell people is, or remind people of, and please, if this comes across as condescending, that's not my intention. I just know we follow this daily, and maybe some of you listening don't, so we don't want to take it for granted that you know every little minute detail. But here's the deal. It's fluid, okay? Recruiting in general is fluid, but particularly in the portal because with the transfer portal, because things happen so fast. And schools generally want to get guys in first, and they don't want other schools to find out. So there's all these moving parts happening in a much smaller window. Josh Horton, apparently a defensive lineman who just finished, what was it? I want to say maybe his second year at Miami. Gosh, it might have been his third. I want to say his second year at Miami. He's visiting Georgia and Georgia Tech to close out this week. Florida is angling for a visit. At first, I was told it's very likely he's going to visit. Now it's somewhat likely. It's changing by the minute. We're going to have to see what happens on his visits to Georgia and Georgia Tech. Defensive linemen that a lot of schools want. I'm going to say Georgia, Georgia Tech, Auburn, Missouri, Florida, or maybe one more school, or some of the main ones involved. Well, when you get those types of schools involved, that means it ain't going to be cheap, okay? Because that's a priority position. So we will have to see. And obviously, Florida's clearly working guys behind the scenes that we're not aware of yet.
Sure.
That's somebody to watch.
And I think, Keith, they'd be willing to spend based on the guys that they targeted in the winter portal. They went after Silver. They went after the Ohio State transfer that ended up at Texas. It seems like they're willing to spend if the right guy's there. Yeah,
the right guy. And the right guy isn't just, and we need to point this out, not just somebody who's a good player. You got to be a good player, obviously. You got to fit the need, obviously. But you maybe, if it's a depth piece, you're clear about that with the guys you already have. Look, guys, we need some depth. Maybe linebacker is somewhere where Florida says, yeah, maybe we as a program add one more guy, but more of a depth piece because they've got so many good players there. But you also cannot risk the chemistry of a position group room by bringing somebody in. So there's all these factors, and we talk about them all the time. Zach, let's talk about the spring game. Gosh, it's funny. There's so much happening in this past week. We moved on so fast from the spring game, but it was an entertaining game. Just a few years ago, it wasn't that entertaining. And DJ Lagway was only taking snaps to hand off because, they wouldn't let him throw this year because of the the lower body / shoulder injury situation he's been dealing with. So you didn't know, could Harrison Bailey, the transfer from Louisville, complete any passes? Would Aiden Warner look like the guy that played against Texas last year, or would he look like the guy that a lot of people thought he was? And he actually looked good, and Harrison Bailey looked good, and the receivers looked great, and Dallas Baker. So it ended up being a really –
Dallas Wilson, not Dallas Baker.
Dallas Baker. Oh, God.
the touchdown maker.
Yes. Who I follow on Twitter, by the way, and he's all over the place. But, it's funny because it ended up being a pretty entertaining first spring game. For a spring game, it was not boring.
Especially without DJ Lagway.
That's right. You're thinking, oh, God, this is going to be terrible. And it ended up being pretty good. You had the championship celebration for the basketball team. 55,000 or over 50,000 people were at the Swamp. So great day for football. So what were some of your main, and we'll get to some individual people here soon, but what were some of your main takeaways from the spring game? And I need to point out, as good as the offense looked, Billy Napier was quick to point out, boy, I saw a lot of missed tackles too. So he sees the yin and the yang there. But Zach, you're the beat guy here. What were your big takeaways?
It's got to start with quarterback, right? I think that obviously Dallas Wilson stole the show, and Jacoby Jackson did as well. But I guess the positive development, the most that happened that we saw on Saturday is that Harrison Bailey looked more serviceable than maybe we expected, and Aiden Warner looked improved. And I think that was a concern, not only based on what we were going to see last Saturday, but just in general about where that position is at depth-wise because of Lagway being limited. Now, we got to hear from Napier after the game, who gave a huge update and said that Lagway is going to start throwing in a couple weeks, and he expects him to be 100% by the time they start OTAs in June. So that's very, very important to hear. But nonetheless, I think it's also important to see where the rest of the room is at, because based on the way camp was playing out, Keith, and what we were hearing and reporting at Gators Online, it almost felt like Aiden Warner almost had a stranglehold on the number 2 job and was just, clearly ahead of Bailey throughout the practices. And again, he looked improved compared to where he was against Georgia and Tennessee, although, hey, man, he kept Florida in that cocktail party. But he looks much better now with an offseason under his belt. He got all the reps with the ones throughout the spring. And there's a reason why he was placed on scholarship. And he was not on scholarship Saturday of the spring game. We asked him right after the game, and Aiden Warner said, I'm still a walk-on. So congrats to him for getting that scholarship. That's a big deal for a guy that grew up in the state as a Gator fan, was at Yale, and decided to, bet on himself and come to the University of Florida, get a great education, get to play for this football program, and now he's a scholarship quarterback and clearly in the mix for the number 2 job. Although I will say, the way Bailey looked and played, and again, it was, he's with the backups. He's going against the backup defense. Let's make sure we point that out. But the guy set the spring game record for passing yards and completions in a game. So, I mean, you can't take that away from him. It helps that he was throwing the ball to Dallas Wilson.
Yeah.
But it was clear that, there's a reason why Florida brought him here. And I think the way that he performed last Saturday is one of those reasons. And I do think that now going into fall camp and throughout this summer, there is still a competition there between Bailey and Warner for that number 2 spot. So quarterback's the most important position in all of sports. So I think we got to start with that. But you mentioned it, Keith. The receivers look great. At first it was J. Michael Sturdivant and Vernell Brown kind of making some plays in the first half. And you're like, all right, Vernell Brown ran with the ones. That's a takeaway. I mean, the guy played with the starting offense in the spring game. I'm maybe not surprised. I've been pretty high on the guy. I know you are too, Keith. But Vernell Brown and Jaden Woods was the other freshman that played with the starters on defense. Now, if you guys followed our reporting at Gators Online, I guess I can say it now. We're months removed. But when they were going through offseason workouts, we reported that Vernell Brown and Jaden Woods were the first 2 freshmen to get their black jerseys, which is like a sign that you're one of the dudes. And they were the first freshmen to get it. So really not a surprise that they were playing with the starters in the spring game, especially based on the way people talked about them during camp. I mean, coaches and players just raved about the guys. So Vernell looked good, but I mean, who are we kidding? We could have started with this and then talked about it for several minutes. Dallas Wilson and what he did in the second half. I mean, good Lord. He was ridiculous. I mean, he looked like a man amongst boys. Obviously, he was playing against some backups and third stringers. But, man, what he did and what he showed was special. As Napier said, that's what a 5-star is supposed to look like. And some videos and highlights have come out. There was one actually that just came out this Friday that I shared on the Gators Online message board. Some slow-mo, incredible editing that just kind of showed how talented he looked in that spring game. And it's very clear that both he and Vernell Brown are going to be involved and make an impact. And I would say Nashawn Montgomery as well. He made some plays and set them up for a touchdown with one of his long catches. So really a lot to like about the offense in that game. Jacoby Jackson went off. He set a spring game record, had a 90-yard touchdown run, 3 total. Hayden Hansen caught a touchdown pass. They gave some offensive linemen the day off, so you got to see some other guys in there. A lot to like about the offense, Keith. Maybe not so much about the defense. Drake Stubbs had an interception. Ty Jackson led the defense with 11 tackles. I thought that the linebackers did some good things. But yeah, I mean, their injuries in the secondary certainly showed up. And I think as great as it was to see Harrison Bailey throwing it all over the yard and Aiden Warner making some plays as well, that reflects poorly on the secondary, but they are not at full strength. And we'll see what they look like when they get those guys back.
Well, that 90-yard Jacoby Jackson run, boy, that was good on the one side. But, man, when you looked at the other side, he should have been tackled for about a half a foot gain, okay?
He was.
So, that's concerning in a way. But, I mean, again, a spring game is a spring game is a spring game. And the coaches will tell you that's for the fans, spring games. I mean, they feel like they get more value out of just a regular practice a lot of the time. Sometimes you want to see how a guy performs with a lot of people in the stands, but do you really think Vernell Brown's going to be nervous when he's playing in front of 80,000? I don't. You know what I mean? So,
no.
But again, there are things you can pick up. I mean, for me, it was Jaden Baugh on the swing pass or the wheel route where nobody can tackle the guy. And I'm always blown away by this. Does the first person ever bring him down? I don't think so, man. I mean, and I've been following him since high school. I went and saw him play. He's special. Michael Sturdivant's catch was a special play, even though it was just a small glimpse. Dallas Wilson.
Aiden Mizell, I give him a shout out. Yeah, he looked good.
Great, but that was just a short pass that he took. He had 19 yards. It's a 24-yard touchdown reception, I think. Yeah. But 19 of the yards came after the catch. Nashawn Montgomery is probably not as far along as Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III, but make no mistake, he's going to play this year. And probably by year 2, you're talking, 25 plus catches in year 3. The sky's the limit for him. With him, you have to hope that in his head, because if the other 2 true freshman receivers, Dallas Wilson, I keep wanting to call him Dallas Baker, but if Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown are playing more than him, getting more catches, what's going to be in his headspace, right? So can he stay? These are challenges that staffs have to deal with. I know that kid. He's focused. He's determined. I think he's going to be a star. He's just maybe have to be a little bit more patient because, again, Florida still has Trey Wilson back, J. Michael Sturdivant, and all this stuff. But loved what I saw on the offensive side.
I will say, and I think if they keep him or play him in the slot, obviously they're going to use Wilson there, but I think he's got a chance. We'll see. But look, I think all 3 of those freshmen are going to play.
I mean, Harrison Bailey said in his post-game interview, this isn't the best wide receiver. I'm paraphrasing. If this isn't the best wide receiver group in the country, I don't know what is. He's telling everybody he knows it's the best receiver group he's seen. So they're loaded. The offensive line returns so many people. And interesting things that you wrote about this. This is one of your big takeaways from the spring game. Bryce Lovett won the Lomas Brown Award. I guess that goes to the top offensive lineman performer in the spring. You got 4 starters back.
You're right.
He's the guy that's trying to win a starting job. How significant is it that he won that?
I think it speaks volumes. Now their other returning starters received other awards for leadership, things like that. But I mean, they have about 5 awards that are named after a Gator great for specific positions, and that's basically the MVP of the spring at that position. And for a guy like you said that is battling for a starting job to be recognized by the staff as the offensive lineman of the spring. I think that speaks volumes as to where he's at. It's not a surprise because we've kind of seen, where he was kind of repping and some of the progress that he made and the way the coaches were talking about him. It was clear that he was the favorite for the job. Now, I will say, to Caden Jones's credit, he's the guy that Bryce, it looks like, is competing with the most at that right tackle spot. He was also recognized by the staff as one of the 4 most improved players in the spring. The others were Aiden Warner, Cameron James, who we've heard a lot of great things about, and then tight end Tony Livingston, who probably has a chance, I think, to be somebody, I won't say breakout necessarily, but certainly has a bigger role and more production in 2025 than he did in 24. But you're right. I think that Bryce Lovett getting that recognition, going through the spring, receiving the first team reps, and look basically like he locked that job up. I think that's huge for Florida. You get that continuity on the offensive line. You've already had him taking reps dating back to last year. Man, they feel really good about that room. And I don't know if he was banged up a little bit or they just gave Najee Harris the day off. But that allowed Cam Waits to get some reps. They gave Damian George the day off as well. So Rod Kearney started at right guard. And then they got a lot of guys in there with the second team unit. So I mean, that line, man, is in the best place that I've seen it in several years. And Bryce Lovett is certainly a part of that.
Yeah, I have heard with Bryce Lovett, somebody I know that follows the team really closely said that, look, there's some real potential there. One thing he may need to work on is just strength, just overall body strength. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have some monsters coming off the edge at the quarterback, and you got to have it all. You can't just have great feet, great arm. You got to have it all if you're going to play that right tackle position. And also, the right tackle usually is the spearhead of the run game.
Yeah.
So you've really got to be a force down there in the trenches if you're going to play that position. Zach, I'm looking at the list of things to talk about, and all these position groups. But man, I go back to the running back room, and Jaden Ball almost gets lost in the shuffle because Jacoby Jackson has this huge game. Aiden Warner and Harrison Bailey do some things. Dallas Wilson. But man, Ball is just – and let me point out, he's the guy that recruits always talk about when they go to practice, or one of them. He's just – is this guy ready to become one of the elite running backs in college football, Zach?
Listen, I'm gonna give something a little bit away here, not anything groundbreaking, but I'm putting out my depth chart projections on Saturday for Florida's offense post spring. I've got an Orr at the running back spot, Keith.
Wow.
I think it's Jaden Baugh or Jacoby Jackson. And with that being said, I think that Baugh will probably start the majority of the games. Maybe he'll start all the games this season. I will also add, though, that Jacoby Jackson started against Georgia over Baugh. And Baugh, I mean, that's his home state team that he was facing. I'm sure he probably wanted to get the nod in Jacksonville, and they gave it to Jacoby Jackson. So he's already started over Jaden once. I'm pretty sure he started over him in the spring game, no? Now, that might have just been, hey, we don't need to see much from Jaden today. Yeah. Jacoby, let this go be your day. But I think both of those guys are going to be equally involved in the run game, playing with the starters, and I think Jacoby will have an even bigger role this year. And honestly, Keith, he is one of the best stories on the roster, and probably one of the best stories in terms of players that they have found like a diamond in the rough and then developed, because it's not like he came here and had success right away. There were questions about whether he was going to last, how he would transition from JUCO, if he could drop the weight that he needed to be able to play in the SEC. And he's answered all those questions and then some. And then you put on top of all that, just a great kid, like one of the best personalities on the team, one of the leaders in the locker room. Players say that he's the funniest guy on the team. He trash talks and jokes with everybody. I mean, that guy's just living his best life right now, coming from Pensacola, where he was just recruited by no one, at a Mississippi junior college, and now he's got a chance to be one of the best running backs in the SEC.
So I asked about Jaden Baugh, and I bragged about Jaden Baugh, and now you got me thinking, geez, did I miss something? Maybe it is Jacoby Jackson, who, by the way, I will say, when we were in the press box at all the games last year, it seemed like whenever he got in, and he had to really fight for reps last year, like whenever he got in, he did something. He flashed something. It might have been a 3-yard game, but he flashed a certain skill set. And, they've really got a great running back room. Katie Daniels and Trayon Webb fighting for the 3rd spot.
And we didn't see either of them in the spring game.
No, Waltez, Duke, Clark, as a true freshman, getting 11 touches in the spring game and showing some flashes there. He didn't have a lot of running room, but he's certainly a guy that's got a lot of ability too. And then you got Byron Lewis coming. You got a good group of walk-ons. I mean, the running back room's in great shape. But you're right, Jacoby Jackson was a great find. I mean, they beat out nobody to land there. Like, he committed over, I can't even remember what school. Was it Charlotte? It was somebody like that. Or Charleston.
I have to go back to look. I interviewed him when he committed, and it was to go from the options that he had to Florida. I mean, Keith, you remember that we had him as a transfer candidate. We thought he might transfer out.
I think it might have been Charleston Southern. I'd have to look it up. Forgive me for not knowing that. But, oh, my God, what great recruiting, guys. You just beat Charleston Southern for somebody. And now, the guy goes out, gets 500 rushing yards last year, looks dynamite right now. He's in fantastic shape. Anyway, look, there's a lot of positives to come from this spring game. Obviously, like Billy Napier said, the quarterbacks still have to develop. They still got a long way to go. Especially the backups. And DJ Lagway, he missed some valuable time. He is going to. We got an ad to read here, but DJ Lagway missed some valuable developmental time. He's going to be throwing in about another week or so. The next few months are going to be crucial for his development. And we're going to switch over to basketball in just a second. But first, Zach's got an ad read here.
Well, one of Keith's favorite attires that he gets to put on comes from Roback. The best way to describe it is the best fit and the best feel. For those who aren't familiar with Roback, they're completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback released so many items with their newly licensed game day collection, and it is fantastic. Novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite schools, including the Florida Gators. Nobody else on the market pairs these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Roback has also been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. Use the code Gators20 on Roback.com for a generous 20% off all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com for 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with the code Gators20.
All right. So you think we've covered football enough? Ready to move into basketball, Zach?
I think so. We could talk about it all day.
I mean, what a wild couple of. By the way, what a wild sports week. Monday night last week, Monday night, the Gators beat Houston to win the national title. One of the more memorable games ever. It really was probably a top 5, top 10 championship game in college basketball history. And then just 6 days later, maybe the most memorable Sunday in Masters history. Zach, I didn't even know you were a golf guy. You're on our board, on our message board, posting about the Masters. I'm like,
so good.
And that thing just drew everybody in. And you're thinking, okay, we had the spring game the day before the Orange and Blue game. Things are going to slow down. Never slows down in our business. The basketball portal window opened. The college football portal window opened. But with basketball, we got a lot to talk about because Florida's roster, Zach, is going to look a lot different next year.
Yes.
I mean, so what do you want to talk? You tell me, what do you want to talk about first? The guys that announced or that either are in the portal, plan to go in the portal, or do you want to talk about the guys that have declared for the NBA draft? Your call. What are we talking about first?
I think people probably want to hear about the transfers, the guys that are hitting the portal. Let's start with them because that's the newest.
Denzel Aberdeen plans to enter the portal. Sam Alexis has entered the portal, and then another player. So roll into that Zach, and tell us what it all means.
Yeah. We wrote about Florida's front court situation at Gators Online earlier this week, and we included a note about Sam Alexis and that, Florida wanted to keep him. They were talking to him and trying to keep him, but it sounded like playing time was going to be something that mattered a lot to him and that he wanted more of moving forward. And with the potential for Florida to return its entire front court, which we'll talk about other than him, I think that maybe he viewed playing time as something that might be hard to come by in 2025-26. So after talks with the staff, after some considerations about his options, he has decided to enter the portal. I don't know with him or with Aberdeen how much the staff will continue to try to keep them and continue having conversations with them and trying to maybe come to an agreement if they don't find other options out there that are better for them. But I do think that Alexis is not much of a surprise just based on the way that he had kind of fell out of the rotation. He contributed throughout the year, but never really cemented a big role for himself, and also had some struggles along the way. And then his injury really set him back. And, he was there throughout the whole postseason run. Seemed like he always had a good attitude and was, supporting his teammates and loving the moment. But I think deep down he wants to play more. And I think that the opportunity that Florida has to return most, if not all of its front court other than him, really probably factored into this decision more than anything. Now for Denzel Aberdeen, it's a little bit of more of a surprise and a little bit more of a blow just because Florida has invested so much time in him, and he has the same with Florida. Obviously he's coming off his best season this past year. When Walter Clayton had his ankle injury at Tennessee, and then Elijah Martin had his hip pointer, Aberdeen stepped up, started 5 games, had back-to-back 20-point performances, had a career-high 22 points against South Carolina, and had his moments throughout the tournament and postseason where he gave the Gators valuable minutes off the bench and made some key plays in some of their wins. But, I think that he's obviously set himself up to try to start as a senior. Yeah. And maybe he still could have with Xavier Lee, but certainly the addition of the Princeton transfer might complicate some things for him. But reporting from Goodman on Friday suggested that his decision to leave didn't have as much to do with Xavier Lee, and it's more about NIL and either the money that he is getting offered from other schools, or maybe the money that Florida's not willing to kind of match or increase to keep him. It looks like that is the driving force behind this, and not so much the addition of Lee or his role on the team moving forward, because I still think that he could have started with Lee, both of them in the backcourt, but he probably would have been playing off the ball more, and I think has been trying to position himself to take over as the point guard as a senior. And I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm sure that probably factored into the decision as well. And we'll see. Maybe the staff still tries to work him. They've got the relationship with him. But I also don't necessarily know that the coaches are counting on either of these guys coming back.
That's interesting. And Alexis, he played 24 games. I want to say he had dealt with the ankle injury, as you mentioned. And he didn't really, I don't know. That one just doesn't register as much with me because
I think what hurt him, Keith, is he got injured the same game as Alex Condon. And if he had not been injured in that game with Alex going out, I think that would have offered Sam some opportunities there to play in SEC play. And he got hurt at the worst time.
Yeah. Had 4 games where he scored in double figures, but they were all sort of that first part of the season. He had I want to say 14.12 rebound game against North Florida, but in SEC play never hit double figures in scoring. But Aberdeen's an interesting one because he did in every game. I was a little feast or famine with him, Zach. I'll be honest with you. I was at that Auburn game on the road when they beat number 1 Auburn. He was fantastic, and he made clutch shots. And he made a lot of clutch shots throughout the season. But again, a little bit of feast or famine with him. I never got the feeling that he was like a true point guard, a guy that could give you 30, 35 minutes, let's say, at the point guard position. But I like that he could play all the spots. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You kind of go back and forth on him. He's a guy that took a beating on the message boards every time he made a mistake. But he did a lot of good things, too.
He definitely took a beating.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I'm kind of – and then I got to talk to him for the first time after that Auburn game. You see he was just so excited about how well he played. And it wasn't like a beating his chest. It was like, I helped us win, man. I'm so happy that I did. I'm happy that I was there for the team, that kind of thing. And I just was like, man, I kind of like this guy. And I like talking
to him. I definitely liked him.
Yeah, like the energy he brought, the smile on his face, all that stuff. So, we'll see what happens there, obviously.
And who knows? There's some rumblings that he got a big offer, from another program. And if he did, good for him.
Good for him. Yeah. It's a business now. We can't take this stuff personally if you're a fan. It's just, the game's changed, man. And the game, what do they used to say on The Wire, Zach? I know you watch The Wire. I hope you watch The Wire.
Oh, yeah.
The game is the game. And this is the game right now, and you just got to adjust. But the other big news, it just never stops.
Xavier Lee too. I mean, I didn't put that in the thing, but huge get for the Gators.
Yeah, big huge get. Princeton point guard, really good statistics. In fact, let me pull this story up here. I believe I have it. Xavier Lee, a strong scorer and distributor. You go look at his highlights, and he's doing a little bit of everything. And Florida had to replace Walter Clayton. Well, all Walter Clayton did was lead the Gators in scoring, Zach. Break the all-time single-season scoring record for Florida, average 4.2 assists a game, knocked down 117 three-pointers, first player in NCAA tournament history since 1979, and Larry Bird to score 30 points in the Elite Eight, and then the very next game in the Final Four. Consensus All-American. Yeah, it's a pretty good player. Xavier Lee, though, number 7 point guard in the On3 transfer portal ranking, 6'4", 180 pounds, was teammates back in high school with Florida forward Thomas Howe.
And also played with Olivia on the Canada national team.
There you go. Overall college stats, averaged 17 points a game as a sophomore, 16.9 as a junior. He's got 1,154 career points, more than a 2-to-1. I think it's 2.5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. And you go watch his film, Zach. I watched his highlights on YouTube. I'm not Dick Vitale here, but boy, he's got some court vision. This dude, he's probably more of a true point guard than Walter. Walter Clayton was a great point guard in his 1 year at point guard, but a scoring point guard. This guy can score, but he's more of a distributor type of, see the whole court. And he's interesting, but also Florida. I don't know. Do you want to talk about him or do you want me to move on to
I think he was a key get for them. I think that his history with Thomas Howe, I think that his skill set as a guard, his range that he's got from three, his ability to score off the dribble, his assist to turnover ratio. I mean, he just checks so many boxes that I think he's the perfect fit for this program. I think he's the perfect fit for this team. And I think he's a great fit for Golden's offense. And, huge shoes to fill with Walter Clayton moving on. But you needed to get the right guy that was going to be good fit for the locker room, good fit for the offense, could make plays in multiple ways the way that Clayton could, and it just for the bang that they're getting for their buck and all the boxes that he checks, the familiarity that he has with some of the players, I just don't know how much of a better situation Florida could have found themselves in after losing just one of the best, if not the best player in school history. It's a good landing spot, I think, for Florida to be in with landing Lee. And I'm sure Lee loves the fact that he is, getting to move up to the SEC, come, play at the highest level, get to reunite with Tommy Howe and play for a team that's coming off of a national championship. It's definitely going to raise his profile and potentially his draft stock as well.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some other basketball news to talk about from the weekend.
So nobody else declared in the last 5 minutes, did they?
And you and I, Alex Condon, starting post player for Florida, had the great championship game. Ironically, he hadn't played that great the last 3 games leading up to that, but came up money in the championship game on both ends of the court. Yeah. Alex Condon just completed his second season at Florida. He's declared for the NBA draft with the option of still returning. So he's doing it the way that a lot of these guys do it now. And then also Ruben, and Zach, you and I pronounce his last name differently. I'm assuming you're the one getting it right, but Ruben Chinleyu, the transfer from Washington State, in his 1 season with Florida, started every single game and was not a big scorer, but had big scoring games and big scoring moments, was a force on the boards and was a force on the defensive end, particularly the latter two, rebounding, defense in the NCAA tournament when it counted. In the second half game against Auburn, this was a guy that was a machine on the boards, physical on the defensive end, just made life miserable, helped make life miserable for Janai Broome and the other players at Auburn. So he is declared as well with the option to still return. So what insight can you give us about these guys? What do you think the odds are? I mean, you don't have a magic 8-ball thing or whatever they're called in front of you, but what do you think? Is there a chance these guys are coming back?
Definitely a chance. And I will add that I think that Tommy Howe is next. I think any day, maybe within the next week, you will probably see him make the same announcement that Alex Condon and Ruben Chinleyu made, and that is to go test the NBA waters while maintaining their eligibility. And, for Condon and Howe, I think that it's probably been expected that they would do this. And then when I talked to them after the national championship game, the conversation that we had made me feel like that's certainly what they were going to do. However, Condon expressed to me, and then Howe kind of did indirectly, that it still seems like they want to come back to Florida. I think that it would take a very high and guaranteed projection for either one of them in the first round to consider leaving their names in the draft and foregoing their eligibility. I think of the two, and again, I'm talking about a guy in Hout that still hasn't even announced yet, but based on his comments to me and some of the things that I've heard, that's the decision we expect from him. And even with Chinleyu in the draft, I think that those two are probably more likely draft prospects. And of the three, I think that Condon probably has the biggest chance to turn pro. He seems to be getting the most first-round projections. He's had the most production in his college career, and then obviously the upside that's there. And then I think for Ruben Chinleyu, I don't know how much he was eyeing this potential process and being able to go through it and get feedback from NBA teams. I do wonder how much Condon and Howe doing it potentially influenced him. Are these NBA teams going to come to Gainesville to work out both of these bigs? And if they are, they're going to come see 2 of your sophomores. Why not see a third one? If he can go through some of these NBA workouts, get exposed to teams, get exposed to scouts, maybe go to the G League, try out. He's going to get some invaluable information and things that he can do to improve his game. I don't think Ruben is looking to leave either, and he made it very clear that if he returns to school, it will be at the University of Florida. And obviously, Condon and Howe have expressed the same. And look, I think with Howe, if and when he does declare and go through the process, I would imagine that he wants to come back to school and play with his buddy Xavier Lee. I think that that's something that's appealing to him, And then obviously, if he could play with Condon for another year, that would be appealing as well. Condon did tell me that Alex and Thomas will influence each other's decisions, that they are close friends. I think that if they decide to come back to college, they want to do it together.
Okay.
I think if one of them leaves, that might make it less likely, but I certainly could see a scenario where if Condon gets the grades that he needs, Keith, if he does make the jump, I could still see Hauck and Chinyelu coming back.
Okay.
And that's kind of my read on the situation.
Okay. If you like what we're doing here at Gators Online with the Gators Online show, make sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button. And we're going to do one more ad. We're going to do some more promos too, but obviously go check out gatorsonline.com as well. We're going to, we'll do the promo in a little bit. Zach's got an ad read. We got a new system now, so I know exactly what Zach's going to do an ad read because I'm too stupid to figure it out otherwise. So Zach, take it away.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, want to give a shout out to our guy Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, who's had some exciting news this spring with his company. He's a big baseball fan, and from his line of work, he's seen firsthand the fantastic traits that baseball players bring to the franchise world. And Andy's offering a donation of up to $500 to $1,000 to Florida's Baseball NIL Collective from anyone on our site. Purchase a franchise through myperfectfranchise.net. He thinks it's a cool opportunity to help the baseball program. And now's the perfect time to contact Andy to learn more. Services are 100% free, and he's here to help. If you have any questions about business ownership with franchises, head to myperfectfranchise.net to learn more. You can call and text Andy anytime at 404-973-9901.
All right, before we wrap it up here, Zach, you mentioned all this basketball news, who could be coming, who could be going. By the way, with Chinyelu, I'm looking at him and I'm like, I love the body. I love the defensive effort. I love the work on the boards, but and he can bring something to the table for an NBA team, but it's still a scorer's league at the end of the day. And my guess is, if I had to guess, that's what the feedback would be like. Work on your offensive game and come see us again in a year. But you never know. You never really know. And you're right. I think it's wise of these young guys to test the waters and get the feedback, man, because it's one thing to hear it from Todd Goldman, the current Gators staff, who they love and trust, I'm sure. Okay. It's another to hear it from the guys that are coaching at the highest level.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that Golden and his group doesn't know more about these guys than the NBA does. But it's sometimes you're trying to tell a sibling something or a younger brother, it just doesn't click with them. Then they hear it from somebody else, and all of a sudden it clicks. And so it could be one of those situations. But what great finds by the staff, by the way, for all those guys. I mean, the three guys you just talked about, Hauck, Condon, Chinyelu. I mean, when they pick up Chinyelu, you're thinking, the guy didn't score anything. Well, this guy didn't do anything at Washington State. What is he? Boy, Todd knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Coach Hartman, all those guys, that whole staff just did some brilliant work. I mean, that's the only way you can describe it, to be honest with you. But Zach,
and you mentioned too, I think it's also smart for them strike while the iron's hot, right? I mean, you just won a national championship. Like, there's going to be a lot of interest in them.
Well, here's an intangible. They're winners now. They are labeled. They're going to be labeled as winners. Alex Condon, that last play of the game. What was he? Where was he the last play of the game?
Diving on that floor.
On the floor. Yeah. Yeah. You know who wouldn't have been diving on the floor? Me and you. No, but I mean, that says a lot, man. It does. So anyway, Zach, what you've talked to some sources. You've had some great basketball stuff, really for the whole season. If I pick out one area, you're going to be like, "Hey, dude, why didn't you mention the first part of it?" But with all this stuff of guys potentially leaving, guys definitely leaving, a lot of moving parts here. How does the staff build a roster for next year with all this uncertainty? What do they do? How do they do it?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's something that they're going through now because you have that uncertainty of what is going to happen with right now as we record this podcast. 2 of your bigs, we expect 3 of your bigs because we expect Hal to go through the NBA draft process as well, and that unknown puts them in a little bit of a holding pattern because obviously they can't go out there and recruit bigs and offer them scholarships and offer them spots that they don't know are open yet. So that's a challenge. I do know that this staff and the bigs are coached by Carlin Hartman. They got to be scouring the market and seeing what's out there, keeping tabs on some potential options. I have been told that they could potentially look overseas as well. If they find themselves in a situation where one of the bigs ends up turning pro, they've had to wait to see what that decision was going to be, and then maybe missed out on some transfers that they could have pursued but didn't, obviously, because they wanted to see what their current players did. If that plays out under that scenario I just described, I think then they might go the international route and see what their options are at that standpoint. But right now it's clear that they're trying to rebuild their backcourt first and foremost. And then I think certainly the decision of Denzel Aberdeen to leave drives that home even more. They've got Xavier Lee on board. The target that we're tracking right now the most as a name to watch is A.J. Brown, transfer from Ohio. He has been trending toward the Gators. Jamie Shaw and Joe Tipton as well, been doing a great job covering the portal at the national level for On3. It seems like they both like where Florida stands, and he's supposed to make a decision next week. So if you can get him on board with Lee, that's a great start to rebuilding your backcourt that has now lost 4 players, 5 if you include the reserve guard that they lost. So to me, Keith, I think it starts there. I think they worry about the backcourt first. I think they keep tabs on some potential transfers in the front court, but hopefully they find themselves in a situation, Keith, where they don't have to add any front court players.
Yeah.
And if they do add somebody, let's say late in the cycle as a transfer or somebody from the international level, it's probably not going to be somebody that they're coming in to count on and play right away. I think it's also important to note the scholarship limit goes up this year. It used to be 13. Now you can have 15 players on scholarship in your men's basketball program. I don't know that Florida will get to 15. I don't also necessarily don't know that they need to get to 15, because my understanding is, that 14th and 15th spot is probably going to be a developmental guy or a freshman or somebody that they're not counting on to play in the rotation. So it's not going to make that much of a difference if your roster's at 13 players, 14 or 15. They just need to have 10 that they can count on and potentially be able to contribute in a game for them. And it is going to be a real rebuilding process. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Well, not only are they waiting to see what their guys, Condon, Chinleyu, Howe, all these guys are going to do, but other players at other programs
are
watching too. So if Alex Condon goes, you say, hey, look, this is a well-connected staff, okay, which has probably developed even more connections in the last month or so now that they are a hot program. So there's probably players out there, not probably, there's definitely players out there watching to see what Condon and Chinleyu and Howe do, because they know this is a fun offense. It's a winning program. It's a young coach that people want to play for. So I'm going to keep an eye on that situation myself. So I don't think it's going to be as dire as maybe it would seem. I mean, again, there's going to be players come out that haven't come out yet. There's going to be, and I'm sure. And again, if you're well connected as a staff, it's never a surprise when it happens, right? You know that, hey, look, we lost this guy and that guy, but we hear that this guy could be coming out. So they're not going to be caught unaware, I don't think. I mean, there's always individual situations, right? You didn't necessarily know this was going to happen or that was going to happen, but they sort of know what they're doing.
And I would say, Keith, like, if they do bring back the rest of their front court, should I say, where they're losing Alexis, they're going to be in a good spot. Like at that point, I think they just need to go and get a shooting guard that can be a consistent high-level scorer for them to pair with Lee. And then obviously they're probably going to now have to go get a third guard from the portal, and we'll see what that looks like and what their options are. However, we still don't know what Isaiah Brown, CJ Ingram, Alex Lloyd, if one of those guys come in and contribute as a freshman, or if Isaiah Brown makes a jump next year, that could take some pressure away from what they have to go out there and find from a front court or from a backcourt perspective. That's
right. And you know this, Zach, better than anybody. There's been players through the years that, and of course I'm drawing a blank now, but guys that maybe didn't do much as freshmen. And then as sophomores, well, the 04s, not all those guys were major contributors as freshmen, right?
Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah.
some of them make these tremendous jumps, and so you never know what you're going to get there. And look, there's a lot of great players to replace, and not only are you replacing the individual talent and skill set of a Walter Clayton, of a Will Richard, of an Elijah Martin, you got to figure out how to replace and then replicate that chemistry that they all had. You know, it wasn't the first year for all three of those three guards, and they, you know, it was the first year for Elijah Martin with Florida, but it was Clayton's second year, right? It was Will Richard's third year, I want to say. So you just never know, man. You know, you're just hoping you can replicate it over and over again, and it's difficult. But once you develop a championship pedigree, then it becomes, I think, a little bit more sustainable. All right, Zach. Right now, we got a special deal. If you join Gators Online, it's $1 for the first week, and we're going to put this guy's photo up. And here, I don't know what you putting up a promo ad or anything.
No,
like
I'm
that?
not. I was just taking that away.
How about this guy? Look at this gorgeous guy, Blake Alderman.
Yes. Mr. Alderman. For those that have been following him since back in the day, once upon a time he had his Twitter account handle was Mr. with an A.
Blake Alderman has joined the staff at Gators Online. So it's Zach, it's Corey Bender, it's Blake, it's myself. We got you covered. Scoop, intel, analysis, all that stuff. We don't get everything first, but we try. We try, believe me. But right
Blake
now,
is a huge hire.
A huge hire. I mean, look, he spent the last 8 years at 24/7 covering the Florida Gators. Look, many of those weekends, Zach, when you were at the beach playing Frisbee with your family, I was sitting out in the sun. No, I'm kidding. Zach works hard too. I mean, I'm just kidding. But a lot of those recruiting weekends when it's 100 degrees, it would be me and Blake huddling under an umbrella. Yeah. We were under the umbrella in front of the football complex when it was 100 degrees and when it was pouring down rain. And we really got to know each other well. And as well sourced, as well liked, and he chases stories. And the guy just works as hard as humanly possible. And he doesn't do it out of any ego. He does it for the simple fact that he believes that if people are paying his salary, i.e. the people listening to the show, subscribers, if they're paying his salary, he owes it to them to give it everything he's got. And I love that kind of work ethic. So we're pleased to have Blake at Gators Online. But again, $1 for the first week right now. Make sure you go to gatorsonline.com to sign up today. Just give it a try. You might not like it. You can always cancel. But anyway, again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to leave comments. The last show was all about how my Wi-Fi sucked, Zach. It was great. Always good.
You look good today.
You know? Yeah. Hopefully the Wi-Fi and the sound was better today. But for senior Gators Online writer, Zach Albaverde, I am Keith Bieber. This was the Gators Online show. Thank you to all for stopping by. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. And we'll talk to you again soon.
See you guys.